This is Harry Judd for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I am joined by Dan Rafael. The fight is off. We got the announcement just after 4 p.m. UK time. The fight between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank is off after Conor Benn. The news came yesterday that Conor Benn failed a drugs test for a drug called clofamine. But let me just get your instant reaction, Dan.
Well, my instant reaction is that based on the evidence that was presented and everything that's happened, it should be off. So I didn't think that I thought that based on the comments from Eddie Hearn and from Callie Sauerland and from both boxers, I watched the comments they made at the open workout and saw some of the other videos that they did. And I thought they would fight more, at least publicly, to keep it on. I mean, it seemed like when they first put out their original statement, they were pretty dug in that they were going to fight to make sure that this fight took place. And, in the end, like sometimes actually does happen, the right thing is done. Boxing is not exactly the bastion of where the right thing happens. In this event, it did. I mean, I feel bad for Matchroom and for Wasserman Boxing and for DAZN and for the undercard fighters, and certainly for Chris Eubank, and certainly for all the fans that maybe had made travel arrangements to attend the fight, or they can get refunds on their tickets. So I'm not so much thinking about that. But there was definitely, I heard from people on social media who had put out money for travel to go from other places in the UK to attend the fight, as well as for hotels and people don't realize that when these events are postponed or canceled, that it has a very big impact, not just on those involved directly, but all the other people that are associated with it. Not, again, like I mentioned, undercard fighters, certainly everybody works, the companies involved, the broadcaster, and even the businesses around the event that would benefit: the hotels, the restaurants, the taxi drivers and Uber drivers and things along those lines. It's just a bad situation. It shouldn't have taken as long to get the fight postponed as it did, but in the end, the right thing was done, and we'll see what comes of it. If Conor Benn suffers any kind of additional discipline, because they made the point yesterday, and from a technical point of view, correctly, that it would be hard for the BBFC to suspend him when his failed test was not a UCOT test, which is what the British board goes by. My idea of the right thing to do, and maybe something that could come out of all this, is that there needs to be a way for the British board to recognize the good work that Vada does. They don't accept Vada. I never quite understood why promoters / boxers would go with a program with Vada that they pay tens of thousands of dollars for. They're just not going to live by what those results are.
Where does Conor Benn isn't suspended by the British Board of Control. This was up until sort of 4 p.m. today. We knew, or rumors, that this was going to be called off. I think everyone wanted, the public mainly, I think, wanted this fight to be called off. But they were pretty adamant, even yesterday, that there were ways around this. How do you think that the promotional companies and teams handled this situation?
Pretty badly overall. I mean, in the end, the right thing was done, like I said. What my understanding is that the British board dug in and they just weren't budging. And look, the British board has to sanction the fight. Now, Eddie Hearn made a statement on his social media in the morning time, my time here in the United States, East Coast, that to clarify, he wasn't going to, I'm paraphrasing, that he wasn't going to go look for some, other outside regulatory body to handle the fight. So when I saw that, I sort of figured the fight was going to be canceled or postponed anyway, because, there really was no other way around it if the British board wasn't changing its mind. And based on their statement on Wednesday, it seemed like they were pretty dug in that, look, this is not the right thing. Now, if you notice in their statement saying that that the fight was prohibited, they didn't make a real true assessment that it was prohibited because of the drug test that he failed, Conor Benn. Their reason in that statement was that it wasn't in the best interest of boxing. So they were drawing a important and a line that will be dealt with in terms of when this goes to the legal people, because there's going to be lawsuits probably as it relates to this. I guess from a legal point of view, they couldn't cancel the fight if Conor Benn hadn't failed one of their tests. But they weren't saying they were canceling the fight because he didn't fail a test. They were making the point that because of whatever that they were not being clear about, which we all know was the drug test, that having this fight take place was not in the best interest of boxing, which is true. And so they're going to obviously, as Sauerland and Hearn said in their statement announcing the postponement, that they were going to take a look at all the legal ramifications and talk to the lawyers, I'm paraphrasing once again, and go and see what can be done about that, because both sides have issues with the way that it was handled. The most important thing is that it's not happening because, Conor Benn, this is, people want to make a blanket statement that every single drug test failure is somehow the same. That yes, none of them are good, but there are degrees of differences in when you test positive, the type of substance that you're testing positive for, what the technicalities are of the rules and the location where you do test positive. In the case of Conor Benn, the substance that he tested positive for, there's like hardcore doping stuff that is used, to do bad things. This is not like he tested positive for marijuana or, something that assists in weight loss, things along those lines, which are other things that I'm not condoning them, but certainly they have, in my mind, a less level of severity than if you're caught with this type of substance. I've been writing about and talking to people about boxing drug testing for like 20 plus years. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a scientist or I'm a total expert, but I know a lot of stuff about it. I've written a ton about it. I know a lot of the nuance of it. And this one seemed to me pretty straightforward. Vada somehow is the one agency that catches folks cheating on a regular basis. And, it just didn't line up that you could have this fight go forward under those circumstances.
I think everyone was really, really confused, a bit upset, really. I think here not just in the UK, I think Conor's obviously making a name globally as well. So we were very upset, not only because this fight is huge and everyone wants to see this fight, but I think many people are fans of Conor Benn. I'm a huge fan. I think everyone was just upset and surprised in how this could be a thing. But in terms of what you've just said there, this isn't a drug then in which, again, he's trying to clear his name. There's going to obviously be a hearing, and sample B hasn't been tested yet, which again could be obsolete anyway, because sample B and sample A, they're very much the same thing, really. But this isn't a drug then which it's not an accident. This one, it's something he's knowingly got, or how do you obtain this drug?
I mean, I don't know how you obtain it, but it shouldn't be in your system. Now let's just take like one of the most famous examples of a positive drug test has been in the case of a number of Mexican athletes over recent years that have tested positive for clenbuterol. And again, I'm not condoning it. It's not a good thing, but there's clear evidence. It's been written about by experts, by scientists, by the people that are involved on a more.
Is this the same?
Hold on.
So is this the same drug as? Is it clofamine? Am I being confused?
No, what you mentioned is what Conor was.
Yeah, sorry.
What he tested positive for. I'm talking about another banned substance, clenbuterol. I bring that one up because that was the drug that Canelo Alvarez tested positive for a few years ago, and that's a famous situation. And they're not equal. And the reason I'm saying this, you asked, how did it get in Conor Benn's system? In the case of clenbuterol, which Canelo tested positive for, Eric Morales tested a positive for a few years ago. There have been several fighters over the years, mostly from Mexico, that have had that come back as a positive test. But that, whether we want to like it or not, it does happen because it is prevalent in Mexican beef. That's just a fact. That people want to make it into a joke and all that, that's fine. That's on them. It just means that they haven't done their proper homework or reading or studying. But the point is, if a Mexican athlete tests positive for a small amount of clenbuterol, to me, that's a far different thing than if you're Conor Benn and you test positive for something that is a known substance that is used to increase testosterone, such as the substance that he tested positive for, that doesn't appear naturally in British beef, let's say. That the way that it gets in your person's system is that you knowingly take it, or, and this is not out of the realm of possibility, that somebody gave it to him. That's part of his team, a nutritionist, a strength and conditioning coach, a trainer, somebody like that. Now, if that's the case, and this is not just a case of Conor Benn, this is any athlete or boxer, is you have to be responsible for what you put in your body. And I know many fighters that will tell you that they won't even take a pill for a headache because they're worried about it, or they don't take put something on. They have a rash on their arm. They won't put the rub on their arm because they're concerned there might be some kind of thing in the cream that would cause a positive test, and they clear everything with whatever agency is doing their testing, whether it's Vada, UCOD, or whoever. And in the case of this Benn positive test, obviously that wasn't done. But I learned a long time ago about strict liability, and I learned about it wasn't so much from a drug testing situation. I covered the Antonio Margarito hand wrap situation, which was similar in the sense that it was called strict liability. And what that means is, as they termed it by the California Commission, when Margarito was busted for having the illegal hand wraps that he tried to fight Shane Mosley in, you are the captain of your ship, meaning you're responsible for what's on your hands, or you're responsible for what's in your body, however it got there. That's your problem, not ours, is the point. And so however it got in Conor Benn's system, whether he took it knowingly, somebody gave it to him and he took it unknowingly, again, not anybody's problem except Conor Benn's. He's responsible. You have to know what goes in your body, what goes on your, in your hand wraps. And that's the way that works. Now, again, it's a different case than, like I mentioned, and I just use that one example of clenbuterol because that does happen naturally. And by the way, just for the sake of the record, the amount of clenbuterol that Canelo tested positive for was a level that was very, very tiny. But because the world drug testing authorities, not just in boxing, but all of sports, understood how prevalent that was in Mexico, they actually lowered the threshold for what would trigger a positive test. So if Canelo Alvarez took that same exact drug test today, he would not come back with a adverse finding because the level would be lower than what's the acceptable amount presently. At the time, it wasn't, but they realized this is a real problem, and they changed the threshold of what was something that would count for a positive test. In the case of Conor Benn's test, there is zero threshold for that particular drug. Hope that's clear. It's a little bit minutia. I just want people to understand that.
No, definitely. I think it's great having you on to give people some insight in terms of the technicalities with it, because it is like I said, we're all surprised in what has happened. But with what you've just said, then how does Conor Benn clear his name? What comes next?
I mean, I don't think it's a matter of clearing your name. I think it's a matter of contrition. Come forward, tell us what happened. People are, at least in America, we're a forgiving country. If you fess up to your mistakes, usually you get another chance. But you have to show some contrition. You have to accept, you have to admit, you have to, explain yourself, do a little bit of penance, and then, you make the big comeback. And I don't think Conor Benn's career is over or completely ruined or anything. But if he goes through the rest of his career trying to say that this was not real or this was fake or I didn't do anything or whatever, I don't think most people are going to believe him. So either A, come clean and say, this is what happened. I apologize. I shouldn't have done this. Or find out, if you truly didn't take it on purpose, you better go through every single person that you've been in contact with that's giving you something that you put into your mouth that would get into your system. Or some kind of, I don't know if it was, well, the test was from my sources tell me that the test return that was positive was from a urine test. So you have to know what is in your body. And so it's up to him. He's got two choices: either come clean and say that you took it and how you got it and what happened, or B, you better figure out who did give it to you and take care of that business also. And that's the way, you can come back. It's not a matter of, making the record clean. I mean, and by the way, I've seen it, tons of fighters have had positive drug tests, and maybe it has a black mark on their record to some degree, but they are able to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, we knew about this to our time mid-morning yesterday. They were pretty adamant that this fight was still going to continue. There were talks. Reports suggested that Eddie Hearn was going through a different commission. Luxembourg was one of the names that was presented, but Eddie Hearn did come out this afternoon our time to say that those reports were incorrect. The fight has been cancelled, but theoretically, if this fight was to go ahead, how dangerous would it have been?
That's a good question. I mean, I can't say because I don't know uh, of the amount that he had in his system. Exactly, what it was doing at that time. And you don't know. I mean, look, Chris Eubank, I believe, was the favorite to win the fight. He's the bigger, more experienced guy.
Let me
So
rephrase.
it's
Let me rephrase the question. And then how not how dangerous would it have been, but how much would it have tarnished the integrity of the sport? That's probably a better question to ask.
listen, tarnishing the integrity of boxing, it's impossible. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but unfortunately, this is but one of like a million cases where these types of things happen, where it would somehow, quote unquote, be a black eye for boxing or tarnish boxing. I mean, that's cliche. I've been down that road a million times. So, it gets people up in arms and gets us all crazy for, a little while. But, boxing is the most resilient thing in the world. I mean, you can't kill it if you stuck, 10 knives in it. It's just not going anywhere. So I don't buy that it tarnished the integrity of the sport. It's not the sport's fault. What it does is it tarnishes the reputation of those who are directly involved. Had the fight gone forward under those circumstances, of course it would reflect poorly on Conor Benn, and it would reflect poorly on the promoters, on Matchroom, on Wasserman. It would reflect poorly on DAZN. And again, when this fight was finally called off, again, my sources tell me that a big part of having the promoters not continue to fight the battle was DAZN feeling the pressure and saying, you know what, guys, we're going to live to fight another day. We're not doing this fight. And at the end of the day, they're the ones putting up all the money, and they can pull the plug at any time. And that's exactly what happened from what I am told.
So you're saying DAZN were a massive part for the reason why this fight didn't go ahead?
100%.
Well, that is, well, again, that we knew this, and part of this anyway. This morning when conversations were going ahead that this fight was gonna continue, because arguably you could suggest that the health and well-being of the fighters is at first priority. Is there any way that you can see this fight potentially going ahead in the future?
Well, when they made their announcement that it was not happening on Saturday and that they were going to pursue their legal options as far as disagreeing with the way that the board decided that the fight would not be regulated, they did terminate postponement. So I sort of think that, at least for the time being, that's wishful thinking. I think it's possible this fight will happen in the future in some form or fashion, because at the end of the day, people still want to see it. It's still two huge names, Conor, the Benn name and the Eubank name in the annals of British boxing history are as big as it gets. And it would still be a very big, popular fight. And as unfortunate it is, this incident makes it even bigger in some sense because of the attention that it's received and the hype and everything, that it just adds another layer to the way that you promote it and build it up. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality that we live in. But I don't think it occurs. Let me rephrase that. It's not like, the fight's supposed to happen on Saturday. Somebody has a sprained knee or elbow, or hurts their shoulder, or has a cut or something along those lines, and the fight gets postponed for 6 weeks and they just put it back together. It's not like what happened with the big boxer women's card with Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall, where, for reasons that they had no control over, the death of Queen Elizabeth, and the fight was forced to be postponed for a few weeks. This is not that situation. So while maybe it does happen in the future, I'd be a little surprised if it occurred under the same contractual, within this time frame, going, in the very near future, that it would happen again. Not to say they can't put it back together in the future, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. I don't know that. It's not like I have some source that says that. It's just sort of my gut feeling about what will occur. It's going to take Conor a little time to put himself in good stead, and I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. should have to sit there and wait around for some other significant fight. He can get some other pretty good fight even without Conor Benn. So we'll have to see what happens with that.
One of the arguments and comments that came from a recent interview that I did was, if this story wasn't broken by the British newspaper, the Daily Mail, then this fight would have gone ahead without any consciousness about what happened.
Probably true. And you know what? That's why media is important. That's why newspapers are important, is to have that aspect. I mean, of a certain level of independence. What people make the mistake about with the media, we're not, when I say we, because I've been a media person for a long time, media people in general, I mean, there's always a bad apple in every cart sometimes,
Mm.
but in general, media people are not looking to like cause trouble. They're looking to tell the truth about what's going on and to act as, somebody that provides oversight to that powers that be, whether it's in boxing or in your local government or whatever. And the Daily Mail, congratulations to them. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know the reporter's name that broke that story, so my apologies to that person, but good job. Big story, deserves all the credit for it. And you're right, if this fight was not canceled because of that story, it probably would have gone forward. Because remember, my reporting tells me that the test that Conor Benn failed, or the sample anyway, was a urine sample was provided to Vada on September 1st. That's over a month ago. Now, it does take time to do the testing and return the results. So if he gave the urine sample on September 1, my sources tell me that sample was returned. In other words, they knew the result. It came to light on September 23rd. That's over 2 weeks. That's it's about more than 2 weeks ago.
Why is test A and test B both done at the same time?
Because that's not the way it works in drug testing. That's another thing that people don't understand.
Mm.
The A and the B sample are, if I come to you, Harry, and I say we're going to do a drug test, and you pee for me, and you're going to have half of that sample is going to go in one vial and get wrapped up properly, and the other half is going to go in the other vial. That's going to be the B sample. And the B sample is there in the event that something happens to the A sample or if there's a positive test. So it's the control against what occurs in the A sample. So if we crack your A sample in the test as we go through the drug testing process, and there's a problem with it, it comes back positive, for whatever substance. Now that's a problem. You now have the option, the way that Vada's rules read is you have the option at your expense to have the B sample opened and tested. And you also have the right to be present when it's opened, or have a representative of you be present when it's open, to make sure there's no funny business or issues with chain of custody or anything along those lines. And you test that sample. And if it comes back the same as the A sample, obviously, you're guilty. If it comes back different, then that's a different story. But I'll say this, I have written, I don't even know, hundreds of drug testing related stories in my time. I've written about 1 million drug tests. I mean, not to toot my horn, but I broke the story of Vada's positive test of Tyson Fury for cocaine, and Lucas Brown's positive test, and any number of positive tests over the years. And I'm telling you right now, in all that time, you don't find B samples that come back different than A samples. I think there was one issue like maybe 15 years ago where there was a legitimate chain of custody issue. But as I tweeted the other day, you have a better chance of being hit by lightning and winning the lottery in the same day as the A and the B sample coming back differently. And I would be willing to wager just about anything in this world that Conor Benn's B sample, should he choose to have it tested, will come back exactly the same as the A sample. So people don't understand. It's the same sample. It's just split in two pieces, two parts, and it's used to test in case there's a problem with the A sample.
Oh,
I just lost it. It's really like a hedge. It's for the athlete's benefit for there to be a B sample. So there's no funny business. That way, if the A comes back positive, you have something else that was taken at the same time that you can look to make sure that there's no issue.
So why, if this was a voluntary test, and there was a positive reading at the 23rd when they got that positive reading back, I guess that is too late notice to have the B sample tested and then received before this weekend's fight. What was the point in doing a Vada testing anyway, if you were not going to recognize it?
That's a damn good question. I agree with you 100%. Why would you spend the tens of thousands of dollars per boxer to have a full panel of drug testing done under Vada's program if you're not going to recognize the results? And there's a video out there on social media where Eddie Hearn asked the exact same question for a fight that was different than the Conor Benn Chris Eubank fight. Why in the world nobody forced them to sign up for Vada? They were going to be tested by UCOD anyway. I wish I had an answer for that. That's a crazy thing to do. I mean, that takes a lot of gumption on the behalf of the athlete if they're cheating to sign up for a program that they know is going to test them. I can't answer that. It does makes no sense. If you knew, if you're spending all that money, the idea is that you want to make sure it's a clean fight. So why then, if you test positive, everybody just want to say, forget it, let them just fight anyway? Well, just don't bother signing up for Vada, and the fight probably would have taken place.
I think that's what we want. I think we want clarity in what's gone on, how did it get in his system, etc. And I think a lot of people also want to know is what was the difference in time between the Vada testing and then the negative UCAD testing as well. There's been many B samples that the Dillian White, I think that one's been thrown around a lot as well. Will we ever see the B sample? Do you reckon?
That's going to be up to Conor Benn. He's the one that can decide if he wants that B sample tested. Then they'll test the B sample. Whether we'll know the result of it or not publicly, that's not for sure. That would be up to him or his team to put out, or it would have to be a situation like what happened with the positive test in the first place. There'd be a leak to a media outlet, and we would know based on that.
Yeah,
but it's he's not under any particular onus to put it out to the public.
What about the British Border Control stance on this? I mean, should they now recognise Vada as a testing?
Absolutely. I've thought that not just for this particular case, but in general. Why would you not recognize a world-renowned testing agency? The Vada people do an outstanding job. I've been covering them for many, many years. Margaret Goodman, who's the president of Vada, has been one of the great champions of clean sports that there is on this planet. Her organization has done a great job in boxing. They're the ones that seem to catch people on a regular basis. The one thing that is a negative to Vada is not that their testing is bad, is they're not an adjudication agency. In other words, their organization can't suspend a fighter, can't cancel a fight, can't make a recommendation. They are strictly to test the fighter and provide the results. And what is adjudicated from that is left up to the local, commissions, the governing bodies, et cetera. So they provide the service of doing the quality testing for any number of substances. I mean, if you sign up for a Vada program, they're not all created equal. You can get certain one that, and because it costs money. You can get, it's like you go to a restaurant. You can either buy the $6 meal or the $10 meal or the $30 meal or the $40 meal. The higher the price, the more stuff they're going to test for. But the point is, Vada will test, and they can't dole out any kind of punishment. So that's the thing. But I do believe that not just the British board, but all sanctioning body, not just sanctioning bodies, but all local commissions, should accept Vada 100%. I mean, in the state of Nevada, where Las Vegas is, where many of the biggest fights in the world take place, when the Nevada Commission activates what they call enhanced testing, which means they want a little bit more. Maybe it's a much bigger fight, or one of the athletes has some kind of background, with a failed test, and there's a reason to have better testing, admittedly, than they can do. They actually work with Vada, and Vada conducts their enhanced testing, and then they report those results to the Nevada Commission. So they accept it. They're one of the great commissions in boxing in the whole world. I can't understand why in the UK, where there's great boxing tradition and a lot of great fighters and big events, why they wouldn't also accept that too. UCAD, in my mind, has shown itself to really have some issues. I mean, we don't have to get into every single detail, but just take a look at the situation with Tyson Fury many years ago, before he beat Vladimir Klitschko for the heavyweight championship. He had a positive test that UCAD covered up that had taken place in the fight before that. And it didn't come to light till after the Klitschko fight. That was ridiculous. I don't understand. Let's just be transparent. If you fail a test, you go through the process. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, not every single positive test is created equal, but you should accept those results, do the proper screening, make sure all is legit, and accept those results. So the technicalities that they were trying to get in place to allow this fight between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. to go forward, because the test was a Vada test and not a UCAD test, is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.